What's going on, everybody? So you could probably tell from the title of the video, we're going to be talking about One Piece today. So if you are caught up with the manga, feel free to keep watching. If you haven't caught up with the manga, stop here. This is where spoilers happen. If you don't mind spoilers, obviously keep watching. Help your boy get his views up. So we're going to be talking about the Admirals versus the God's Knights. This is something that I've been thinking about pretty much for the past 2 or 3 weeks since the God Knights have been introduced into Elbaf, and that we know a good amount now about, what their powers are, what they could do, their regeneration abilities, just like the Gorosei. And so I've been thinking, who are like the strongest force for the military, or not even the military, but for the government? Because you would think the God's Knights, who are pretty much protecting Mary Joie and are pretty much the subordinates of Imu and the Gorosei, you would think they would be stronger than the Admirals, right? And in a sense, you can make the argument that they are, and this is what we're going to do today. We're going to kind of argue both sides here, because at the end of the day, I don't really know how to answer this question, but we're going to make some good arguments. So we've seen Gunko pretty much whoop the Straw Hat, so we know, and she's used her devil fruit for a good amount of time, right? So we've seen what she could do, her capabilities. We've seen Sommer's capabilities. We've seen Killingham's capabilities, being able to take, things out of dreams and make people fall asleep and cause, create big armies of just nightmares and stuff. And then we've seen Shamrock, and this is the least amount that we've seen from a God's Knight is Shamrock, because all we've seen was his Cerberus sword, right? And we don't know necessarily if his sword is only the Cerberus, right? Or if he could create other things from the Cerberus, but for now, we're just going to go with the Cerberus, right? And in terms of hockey, I don't want to say that the God's Knights don't have simple armament hockey or basic, future sight hockey. I could see Gunko having some kind of future sight hockey or observation hockey, and then I could see pretty much everyone having at least armament hockey, right? Because we know that Logia users literally cannot be harmed. They're a step away from the God's Knights without being, possessed by Emu or having these Emu-like powers to be immortal, right? Because if you don't have armament hockey, you're literally not touching any Logia user at all. It doesn't matter who you are. So, there's that, right? And we're gonna be talking about Akainu, Aokiji, Green Bull, and Kizaru versus Shamrock, Gunko, Killingham, and Sommers, right? And now, if we do a 4v4 type deal, the question is, can the God's Knights hurt the Logia users? Just for argument's sake, we're going to say yes. And also for argument's sake, we're going to say that Gunko turning into Emu, we're just going to keep that in the back pocket. Kind of like a trump card, right? Because I don't really count that as a God's Knight. That's pretty much just Emu at that point. But if they were to fight, will the God's Knights be able to damage the Logia? And vice versa, right? Will the Admirals be able to damage the Gorosei or the God's Knights? Do they know how to use the technique to actually hurt and defeat, the healing powers and get past the damage restoration that they have? Because it seems like, that's a secret. And I don't think the Admirals would just outright know how to hurt, somebody like the Gorosei or the God's Knights, because at the end of the day, that's kind of like Emu as well. So I don't think she would want her strongest members to know how to defeat her or him. And this is the thing. Are the Admirals stronger than the God's Knights? Because since the God's Knights are just the straight up subordinates, you would think they would be stronger in every facet of the way. But no, just because they rely on that self-healing and damage restoration from Emu, we don't know the extent of their hockey capabilities. And so I would want to know if they can still heal and regenerate, if Akainu just blasted them with lava and just kept them in the lava, would they just be able to continue and regenerate that? Or would they, do they have enough hockey to just overcome the lava? Or does Akainu have could he hockey up his lava and just trap them in a pool of lava to where they're always just taking damage? Because how do you regenerate that? Or how do you regenerate if Aokiji just totally outright freezes you? You know what I mean? You would need to have some kind of fire to melt that away. But if he just freezes you and uses, if Aokiji uses Ice Age, how How do you get out of that? Like, your healing factors, it wouldn't matter because you're just stuck in a block of ice. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And like, I could see like Kizaru and Green Bull having a hard time fighting these guys because there's really not much like Kizaru, I guess, could do like a ton of damage with like his light, lasers shooting and stuff like that. So like he could just unload those lasers over and over again to where it's hard for you to heal up. But at the end of the day, we just haven't yet seen if the Gods Knights can use armament hockey. And like I said, I'm not going to say that they can't, but if they could, then obviously I think the Admirals would be in a lot of trouble, especially somebody like Shamrock, who we believe is going to be like the equivalent to Shanks in terms of hockey power. So like if he has that same amount of hockey, I do think the Admirals are in trouble. But besides them, like I don't see like, because like even Luffy and the gang, they kind of didn't even sense, that a weird feeling. Like Scopper Gaban, his observation hockey had to be so strong to sense the Gods Knights. Even when the other Gods Knights came, like when Gunko summoned Sommers and Killingham, nobody really sensed them. So it's like, how strong is their hockey? Because if they don't have a lot of hockey, then it's kind of like they might not be able to, damage the Admirals too much. And like I said, what would happen if Akainu just put him in a boiling pool of lava, or if Aokiji just straight up froze all of them, right? I think the only one who could like really get out of that would be Shamrocks at the moment. I think we do need to see a little bit more before we come into like a final conclusion. And then if there was ever like a moment of like the Gods Knights being defeated, at the end of the day, they have the trump card of Imu being, taking over their body. And we don't know if that she can take over any of the other ones, because there was like the heterochromia like theory for Gunko. That's why that, Imu like took her over, because she has one eye that's one color, the other eye that's a different color. So that was like really emphasized in the last chapter. So we don't necessarily know if Imu could take over everybody else. But if she could at least, or if he could take over Gunko, then I mean, you're just pretty much fighting Imu at that point. And I'm pretty sure Imu has all kinds of hockey, armament, crazy conquerors hockey, crazy advanced armament hockey, advanced observation hockey, all that. So let me know what you guys think. Are the Admirals stronger? Because they've always been known as the strongest fighting force of the government. Oh, well, technically of the military, maybe the government as well, depending on how you kind of interpret that. But like, wouldn't you also think that the Gods Knights are the like one step above the Admiral? I would believe it's like Admiral, Gods Knights, and then Gorosei, Imu, right? That's kind of like my chain of power in my head. But maybe the Admirals and the Gods Knights are a little bit closer. Maybe the Admirals are a little bit stronger than the Gods Knights, because you got to take into account too all of the experience and the battles that the Admirals have gone through. Like that's going to take a big, like that's going to play a big part. And we already know that for a fact, Aokiji and Akainu, they for sure know all kinds of hockey. Like they have to have, some kind of advanced Conquerors hockey, or maybe Conquerors hockey. They at least for sure have advanced armament hockey, because they would have to, when they fought each other, that's the only way they could damage each other is by hockeying up, their attacks. So they for sure, I think, could beat, or at least damage the Gods Knights to a point to where the Gods Knights would like be really pissed off about that. But also, we don't know if the Gods Knights have different yokai forms like the Gorosei, right? Like the Gorosei aren't all yokai, but they all have different forms from Imu, and we don't know if they have those forms yet. But it seems to me that they are pretty much on a level playing field until the regeneration gets a little too out of hand, right? But at the same time, I don't know how someone like how would your regeneration work if you were frozen in the Ice Age? Like if you would have to have an enormous amount of hockey to break out of that. And like I said, we haven't seen a lot from the Gods Knights yet in terms of hockey use. So going off of that, I would say for now it's a tie. For now, it's pretty dead even. I could see them fighting for days, kind of like Aokiji and Akainu. but I also wouldn't be surprised if the regeneration just becomes a little too much and it becomes a battle of stamina and endurance. And I would have to give it to the God's Knights for there. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Who do you guys think would win, the Admirals or the God's Knights? I hope we get to see more and more as Elbaf goes on from the God's Knights, and obviously we're going to see a lot more from Shamrock whenever we get back to him. He's probably at Marijois right now, defending on whatever is going on at Marijois because the Holy Land is on fire. So we'll see what's going on with that. But yeah, let me know in the comments, who do you guys think is stronger, the Admirals or the Holy Knights? So yeah, peace out, everybody. That's the video. Deuces.